there was a Cork Planning Association report in the 1920s, and it says, kind of gives a picture of the layout of what the city was like. So it says there were schools where there should be warehouses, dwellings where there should be factories, fields where there should be houses, and factories in all sorts of inaccessible and inconvenient places, and no civic centre. So this is a city. It paints a kind of a grim picture of kind of a unfunctioning city. You know, a city that was also running on a deficit. And this is where Philip Monaghan came in, and he was he would have been involved in independence struggle. He shared a cell with Dev in Lincoln jail, shot in the neck during the Civil War. He was pro-treaty during the Civil War. He ended up getting sent to Kerry as the commissioner, because Kerry was not playing ball with the Free State. And then he got sent to Cork City as a commissioner, and then he initially took over as city manager, and he was the first city manager in the country. Kind of autocrat, he was kind of devoid of any having to answer to elected officials or anything at the time. There was none in Cork at that time. He was so he was 35 years, but his legacy is the housing and what he did for housing. So if you look at the quote I just gave there, inner city, you're thinking the marshes around Mercy, Moore Street, Henry Street, all the way down towards North Main Street. Then you got Curls Quay, Paul Street, all that area. They would have been very derelict and dishevelled tenements and tenement life. So first of all, the first developments would have been up the north side and around Grana Broher, which would have been dubbed the Red City from you're looking down from the middle parish, or looking up from the middle parish, which were great. Got people out, got people housed into their own places, but it was still kind of cluttered and cramped, and it was on a hill, and it didn't have the freedom and amenities that would be given to those that were rehoused out in Ballyphehane. So Ballyphehane happened in 1950, I think, when the first houses were built, and so that was a great kind of leap forward in that sense in housing. Post-war period, they probably would have been these market gardeners would have gone into decline because of the rise of industrial farming within the country. So when the compulsory purchase order came from the city, a lot of these people would have been open to it. They were given houses as well as part of their compulsory purchase order. But Ballyphehane compared to other developments was, space was of the optimum. It's a flatter area. You have wider roads, bigger gardens, slightly bigger houses, marginally, but there. So you have that, and then you also so that enabled the community to thrive, And then you had these little shopping centres dotted around. So you had one on Torytop, you had Torytop Road, you had Pierce Road, and then you had ones further out in Connolly Road as well. So people didn't have to rely on the city anymore, So they had their own little community. So and then you were kind of bookended with two parks, Torytop Park, which was a field, but since and then later on you get the community centres, and you get all this stuff, and this rise of community. But that sense of community was there from day dot, because from the houses where they were moved from, let's say in Moore Street, there was 10 families. Those 10 families were put in let's say on Kent Road, so that the community was transported from the inner city to there. Now they would have been dotted with other people from the countryside and whatever, but that sense of community persisted after the transition. It's great. I think, which was a very, very, very successful in the success of Ballyphehane as a development. In these times, you're given some social housing. You're given a corporation house. But you're given a house. It's a shell. It has to be populated with things. Cookers and whatnot. How are you going to afford that? So you generally, people of the social class, their credit with banks wouldn't have been great. So they would have generally been pawning, which was huge, and money lenders. So and as you can probably tell from those avenues of the informal economy, there was an element of fear and distrust and all these kind of things that would be running with them. So in Ballyphehane, you had the first credit union in the south of the country. So the south of Ireland, not counting Northern Ireland. And it came about by Father Fitzgerald, the parish priest. He was on a jolly in America, speaking to another priest about this new community that he was overseeing and whatnot in Ballyphehane, and that, you know, there was problems with money lending and there was problems with this, and he didn't want whatever. So he was advised to look into credit unions. So he did so, and he established one in the community, and it was ran for the first couple of years from the basement of the church there. And I think to illustrate the point of what it means, is like I'll tell the story of Arthur Walker again. So Arthur Walker was born in Evergreen Road. Mother died when he was young. His father was away working in England. So he was brought up by his grandmother, and she was on like some sort of widow's pension, which was, you know, paltry. And they lived by what would now be the Nan O'Nagel Centre, and that was a school, South Pres. And to kind of help her income, she would sell apples from her window to the school kids coming and going. And Arthur's job was to go out to Ballyphehane before the corporation, and to where the church actually stood was an orchard, it was Halloran's orchard, and he'd collect apples and he'd bring them back and he'd sell them. So then Arthur gets married. Arthur gets an apartment in town. It's no good. There's all fights happening. I think it was above the Washington Inn, and it was no good. And then so he kept banging on the door of the city council, or the corporation as it was at the time, to try to get housed. He gets housed out in Ballyphehane, in one of the first developments there, Joe Murphy Road. And he's a young family, he's got to put stuff into his house, he's got to make, you know. So these options. So he was suggested to go to the credit union. Went to the credit union. His first thing he did was build a wall behind his house so that he'd have some privacy for his kids to play in. Then he bought a door, because a stronger door for his house. Then he got a car, you know, and the car enabled him to bring him, his family, neighbours' families on excursions to West Cork and East Cork and further afield as it was. And that still talked about, Arthur Walker and his Morris Minor, you know, like it's still like that. It was such a big deal, you know, like, and we overlooked cars, you know what I mean? Some people have two cars going up, you know what I mean? Whatever, you know, this was a community car almost, you know, that and the credit union, this mode of regulated credit streams helped people to elevate themselves, where otherwise earlier, without these kind of modes, they wouldn't have been able to do so. And that kind of falls into this quote from Philip Monaghan as well about, you know, this not passing poverty down the generation, you know, like all this Ballyphehane work that I've done was for obviously the Ballyphehane Centenary Committee, but also we were help funded by the Cork Folklore Project. Cork Folklore Project is, you know, been run since 1996, and we're collecting the folklore and oral history of Cork City.